You guys know Square-Enix, right? That company that owns Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Kingdom Hearts, and those other RPGs you grew up loving? Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Square-Enix is falling from greatness. That doesn't mean that they don't make good games anymore. Guardians of the Galaxy and Final Fantasy VII Remake were both good, but they've had a lot more duds ever since the 2020s began. I'd even say that Square-Enix and Sega have switched places, with Sega now making great RPGs like SMT5 and Persona 5, while Square-Enix is releasing licensed trash like Balan Wonderworld to make a quick buck. In this video, I'll be going over Square-Enix's flops from this decade, and why I think they're on a decline. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking the video or sharing it with a friend. Let's begin. During this decade, Square-Enix has had a history of rushing games out before they're ready. The original Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles released for the GameCube back in 2003, and it was a good multiplayer game that was hard to play. It was one of two GameCube games that required each player to have their own Game Boy Advance and GBA to GameCube link cable in order to play with multiplayer. So when Square Enix announced a remaster of Crystal Chronicles in 2018 that wouldn't require the extra equipment and would be on modern consoles, tons of people became excited. The game was slated for release in late 2019, and then they later announced ports for iOS and Android for some reason. And then it was dated for January 2020, and then got delayed again to August 2020. Many of the complaints to this remaster come from the removed local multiplayer in favor of region-locked online multiplayer that didn't work well overall, and that the new mechanics added new problems. And then you have the PC port of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which released at the end of 2021 for $70. Keep in mind the original was $60, and this version is one of the worst PC ports in recent memory, with stuttering, crashes, and no graphics settings options. And we have to mention Balan Wonderworld. Many people were legitimately excited for this game because it seemed like it was going to be the new beginning for mascot platformers. We've been getting remasters of platformers with games like the Crash Insane trilogy or the Spyro Reignited trilogy, but this game would be the game that opens the floodgates to brand new platformers. People lost their hope for this game after playing the atrocious demo. Square Enix didn't want to delay the game to make it better, and it failed, and then they deleted the demo from storefronts because they didn't want people to think it would be bad and pay $60 to get the bad experience. Something that makes me angry is that it got a marketing budget instead of Neo The World Ends With You, which is a much better game but underperformed commercially because it was barely advertised. Unfortunately, problems would be the theme of Square Enix this decade, and it even affects the Earth's mightiest heroes. Oh man, it's the Avengers, the Earth's mightiest punching bag. This game was announced way back in early 2017 as the Avengers project. All of this reveal trailer showed us was that Crystal Dynamics would be making an Avengers game with Square Enix publishing. We didn't see anything about it again until E3 2019, when they showed the audience a 14-minute cutscene that was supposed to show us what the game would be like. It was going to release in May 2020 before being delayed to September 2020, and it was not a good release. People didn't like how they hid the fact that it was going to be a live service game until months before release, how it switches to a Destiny-like progression system halfway through, the bugs that come with the launch of any live service game. Yeah, it should have just stayed a single-player game with option multiplayer. They also made an exclusivity contract with Sony to make Spider-Man a PlayStation exclusive character, which made tons of fans angry. Imagine if in Fortnite you could only use the Spider-Man skins on the PlayStation versions because Sony handed Epic Games a check. Now imagine if those skins weren't added until after Chapter 3 Season 1 because they didn't have the time to add them in before the season ended, and you've got Spider-Man and Avengers. You know they screwed up with this game when Square Enix admitted they lost $63 million on the game, which is really embarrassing considering you have the MCU movies breaking box office records in the film industry. Meanwhile, Square Enix couldn't break even on their own Avengers game. The only good thing that came out of this was the aforementioned Guardians of the Galaxy game that Eidos Montreal made with a license. It's probably my favorite game of 2021. But speaking about underperforming commercially, for a while now, Square Enix has found themselves in a Capcom-like scenario. What I mean by this is that they're overestimating how well their games are going to sell, only to act like it's all doom and gloom when a game sells well instead of it selling amazingly. This started a decade ago when their Tomb Raider reboot released in March 2013, and it reached 3.5 million copies sold by the end of the month. This is really good for video game sales, however, Square Enix said that it failed to reach predicted sales targets. Thankfully, the game got 2 sequels, but it's insane to say that 3.5 million copies isn't enough. Another Square Enix game that underperformed was Guardians of the Galaxy. It released at the end of October 2021 to good reviews, and it even won Best Narrative at the Game Awards last year. But when it came time for their financial results briefing on February 4th, 2022, they said that, quote-unquote, the game's sales on launch undershot our initial expectations. This terrifies me because Guardians was probably my favorite game of 2021, and it sucks that we might not get a sequel or anything similar to it because Square wanted it to sell better. My guess as to why it didn't sell well at first is because it launched for $70 on 9th gen consoles, and it was like $25 during Black Friday a month later. Another reason could be that they cheaped out on the Switch version by making it a cloud game, but I'll get into those later. The main reason was probably because Square-Enix also published the Avengers game that bombed last year, and people probably just assumed that it would be something similar to that. This is mostly coming from a Nintendo perspective, so this problem won't affect everybody, but putting cloud games on the Nintendo Switch, a handheld console where you won't always have access to Wi-Fi, is a really stupid decision. But our first attempt with cloud gaming on the Switch was Hitman 3, which I'm pretty sure everyone who's interested in Hitman 3 probably has another way to play it. Then they did Guardians of the Galaxy, which again, you probably have another way to play it if you're interested in it. And then you have the Kingdom Hearts Integrum Collection, a collection that includes all of the Kingdom Hearts stories from the first game to 3 Remind. This was their way to cash in on Sora getting into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This collection's a great idea. Why did they think that cloud streaming would be the best way to play these action RPGs on the Switch? And worse yet, the entire collection retails for $90 when it's not on sale. Unfortunately, these games were able to crack the top charts on the Nintendo eShop in both Japan and the United States, so we're probably getting more of these cloud releases soon. Can't wait to play Dragon Quest VIII cloud version, because apparently the Switch can't handle PlayStation 2 games, even though Square-Enix brought both Final Fantasy X, X-2, and 12 over, and they all 3 run fine. In an interview, they said something about possibly doing a native port of 1.5 plus 2.5 later on, but it still sucks that we got stuck with the cloud versions in the first place when we've been begging for these games for years. I can't believe I'm talking about these again, but gacha games are typically mobile games where a player can unlock new cards from loot boxes or a roulette wheel. The only way to get a roll of the dice is to grind for a certain currency or to pay real money. To give Square-Enix credit, they are one of the few companies that actually ports their old RPGs to mobile phones. The Final Fantasy Pixel remasters came to mobile phones instead of consoles, for example, but it feels like every game they release gets a mobile phone gacha game tie-in. You have Nier Replicant coming out in April 2021. We better release a spin-off titled Nier Reincarnation 2 months before to build up hype. And don't get me started on Final Fantasy 15 A New Empire, a Clash of Clans like that was the mobile game ad everyone and their grandmother was seeing for a while. And then there was Babylon's Fall, which was developed by Platinum Games, who also made Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, and Astral Chain. This was another Avengers case where it was announced and people didn't know that it was going to be a live service game until much later, and people weren't happy when it was revealed. It came out on PS5 and PC, and it was really bad. Apparently it's getting an Xbox Series port later, but I wouldn't hold my breath judging by the reception from both fans and critics. And then we had Chocobo GP, a $50 video game that was stuffed with loot boxes, battle passes, and a premium currency that expires. Who the heck does that? Somebody at Square-Enix thought it would be a good idea to have in any game. I guarantee that these games are going to come back up again once I make the second gacha game gamble video. Let's finish this video off with something even scummier. Oh my god, I cannot wait until these fucking things vanish from the face of the earth so I never have to hear about them again. For those who don't know what an NFT is, or if you're hopefully watching this video from a future where these things have crashed and burned, imagine a Fortnite skin that only you can own, and you got it by spending thousands of dollars in fun bucks or something. You can do whatever you want with it, including selling it for more fun bucks, and storing it requires using far more electricity than your basic everyday activities. These things use more electricity in 2021 than entire countries did that year, so it always aggravates me when I hear about some music artist or game studio trying to get in on it. Every time this happens, there's a ton of controversy, people tell them that they'll never support another one of their products, the company apologizes and then backs off from doing NFTs, and then another company sees a burning building and says, yeah, that's what I want to do this week. It drives me insane that they see the backlash and want to continue to shove it down our throats. Square-Enix announced that they were interested in this shit last year, and instead of backing down when there was fan backlash, they doubled down on it with the president's New Year's letter where he said, quote, I realize that some people who play to have fun, and who currently form the majority of players that have voiced their reservations towards these new trends, and understandably so. However, I believe that there will be a certain number of people whose motivation is to play to contribute, by which I mean to help make the game more exciting. This quote's basically saying, Yeah, I know you people don't like NFTs and have valid complaints. However, we don't care. Learn to like it and keep giving us money. It's ironic that we're supporting this stuff considering their most popular RPG, Final Fantasy VII, has the enemies trying to destroy the Earth for profit. They've literally become the enemies of our own game. I feel like this whole situation with the NFTs summarizes the problem with Square-Enix. Nowadays, they're a company that can give us some really great games from time to time, but they'd rather take the quick and easy way out, regardless of what the fans will think. I hope someday that the Square-Enix we fell in love with will return, but until that day comes, I can officially say that Square-Enix has changed for the worst.